brought to you by Accenture Extended Reality. This is Field of View.
Why don't we start from the beginning? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what you studied and what took you to work in XR? We like to deep dive into the origin story of all of our guests. So why don't you start with that?
And I think that's the best part of the mixed reality universe. People come to it from all different backgrounds. It hasn't been decided yet how this world is going to work yet. So it's given a lot of opportunities for people from untraditional backgrounds to play a part. And that's definitely my story too. I grew up in a small town in Oregon, and I always wanted to live in the big city and work in film. So I moved to New York with knowing nobody. And I worked in advertising because it's the closest thing I could get to being on set and telling stories. So I worked for on different commercials like Hershey's and Pepto-Bismol, Crest. I always joke that I gave people cavities and then I tried to take them away. And and through that discovery, I started getting into marketing for startups. I moved to Silicon Valley and I worked for a variety of smaller startups, finally ending up at a nonprofit tech company called Medic Mobile. It was a fascinating company. We traveled around the world trying to solve global health problems. And that journey took me to a tent at a conference in New York called The Future of Storytelling. If any of you have ever heard of it or had the chance to go, I highly recommend it. It's the world's leading innovators around storytelling, marketing, and film. And they had a VR tent. And I'd always heard about virtual reality. I remember seeing it on stage when I was maybe 12 years old at a kind of science fair in Oregon, but I never got to try it. So I always just imagined what it would be. So I walk into this VR tent, a guy puts a headset on me, and all of a sudden, as the world fades away, I'm a linebacker running down a field. My muscles are bulging. I have this football. I get to the finish line, and the crowd goes wild. And I remember taking off my headset and looking around and going, this is the future of everything, of communication, of storytelling. And that thing that happens to us when you really experience that thing that lights you up, that's what happened to me. And the other part was I found there was one woman in the tent who was premiering a different VR app. And I asked her how many women were in this space. And she said I could count them on my hand. And I remember thinking that I really wanted this next stage of kind of innovation, storytelling, connection to make sure that had a bunch of diverse voices playing a part in it. And selfishly, I wanted to be one of those. So I started looking around, and there were a couple VR companies that were out and about, and I stumbled onto AltspaceVR. And at the time, it was just an empty room with a concept. It was before the Gear VR came out, or the Oculus Rift, or the HTC Vive. So it was all just an idea, a room, and the hope of filling it with people. And so I joined that company, and 2 months later, they premiered on Gear VR, and then 2 weeks later was Vive and Rift. It was just like the promised land month of VR for consumer adoption. And I'm wandering around, I'm their marketing manager, and I'm wandering around as a camera avatar and meeting strangers from all over the world and hearing their stories. And just capturing that, making eye contact with the customer I was supposed to market to, created such again, this world is kind of the next stage of so many things, and also the next stage, I think, of marketing and storytelling, because you're making eye contact and asking customers what do they want. And so I became kind of the hopefully forgivable thorn in the side of all of my engineers at the time, because I was the one constantly going, hey, have we tried this? Have we thought about moderation? Have we tackled this?
Did you know you can catch this full episode of Field of View and more by subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, or wherever you get your podcasts to not miss another immersive technology moment? Subscribe today.